The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service presents Let's Talk Finance, a feature exploring the various elements of the economic program.
Welcome again to Let's Talk Finance here on Nationwide 90 FM. We are going into our second installment. This discussion on the Jamaica Deposit Insurance Corporation celebrates 20 years of existence this month, and it is an entity founded in 1998. And it has been doing very, very well for depositors to financial institutions, providing a level of security in a financial system that was rocked in the mid-90s and from which the policymakers learned very expensive lessons, and the taxpayers of this country and the JDIC forms a part of the vanguard to prevent the country from bleeding as it did back then. The CEO, Antoinette McKain, was my guest last week. She returns this week to talk about the brass tacks of how the JDIC operates. Now, last week, Ms. McKain, welcome again, I must say.
Thank you, George. Thank you for having me back.
Right. Last week, you told us about the quantum of the ceiling, the repayment ceiling. So if you have funds in an account and the bank collapses, or there's caused by a run on the bank or other eventuality, let's call it that, in the financial system, the JDIC will pay $600,000. I wanted to ask, so it's $600,000 to a single depositor. If my wife and I have a joint account, is that $600,000 times 2, or is it still $600,000? If I own property, what is used to calculate the various payments to individual account holders, joint account holders, and others? And I'm going to ask you, why $600,000?
Great, okay. So let me start first with the first part of your question,
Yeah.
and to who gets the $600,000. I think that's the question.
Yes.
Okay. And I sort of had started off a little bit last week with you, and here we go again. Okay. Ownership of accounts is in different categories, right?
Yes.
As you just said, you can own an account individually. You, George, alone owns the account. Mm-hmm. Also, you can own an account with your wife,
Yes.
joint account.
Yes.
You can also have a company, and the company owns an account, and it's
Yes.
your company as well. You can trade. You can have a business license and trade as a particular entity, and that owns an account as well. So deposit insurance is available to all those categories. Mm-hmm. Individual accounts, joint accounts, company accounts, trading as accounts, and as well trust accounts. So trust accounts, many people might not be familiar with it, but it's where one person legally holds funds for one other person or
Yes.
a number of other persons
Yes.
who are actually the beneficiaries.
Yes.
Deposit insurance is available to all those beneficiaries
Yes.
in that trust account.
Like when persons act for minors who will get
Precisely.
money when they reach 18 or
and
21
we
or
call
whatever.
some of those nominee accounts.
Yes.
But the true owners of all accounts effectively will get deposit insurance up to $600,000. So theoretically then, if you have an individual account, you could have, that's assuming you have $600,000 in the account, right?
Yes.
You could theoretically get $600,000. If you have a joint account as well with your wife or child or anybody for that matter, you could also get $600,000 on that account.
Yes.
So effectively then that would be $1.2 million worth of deposit insurance.
Yes.
If your company has an account as well, that's $600,000 it could get.
Yes.
And if there's a trust account, the deposit insurance goes to the persons who are supposed to benefit from that trust account, up to $600,000 each.
Oh, but okay, so that's for the trust. But clarify for me here, because this is the question many people would have asked.
Right.
If it is that there are 3 signatories to an account, so me, you, and Dr. Clark, the finance minister, we have a joint account, and we have $2 million in the account, and things go bad at our bank X crashes, and the JDIC now has to do a payout. Is it that we get, the 3 of us, $600,000 as one payment to be divided however we decide, or is it that that's $600,000 times 3?
No, that one is $600,000. Because remember, I said that joint ownership is a legal person.
Yes.
As well, if you owned land as a joint owner with your wife, and you sell that land, and the land was worth $10 million, you're not going to get 10, and your wife is not going to get 10, right? You're going to each get 5 because you're joint owners of the whole.
Yes.
So legally, in deposit insurance, that joint ownership, even though there's 3 of you on it or 2 of you in the joint ownership, it really is covered. It's one account, it's a legal entity.
Yes.
You get 600 on that one account. However, here is the thing. If you own a joint account, as you said, George and the Minister of Finance and that third person you named, that's one joint account.
Yes.
But suppose you had another account, George and the Minister of Agriculture,
Yes.
who was the Minister of
Yes.
Finance.
Yes.
Right. If you had another account, George and the Minister of Agriculture
Yes.
and the third person, that's a separate joint account.
Yes.
And as well, if you're George and
And the Prime Minister.
the Prime Minister
Yes, yes.
had another account,
Yes.
that's a separate account.
Yes.
So George, would be legally a legal owner of those 3 accounts
Yes.
separately, and you would get up to 600 on each of them.
Yes. So for the trust, now explain that for the listeners again. You're saying that accounts, that trust accounts, how do the insurance payments go?
For trust accounts, and the account doesn't actually have to have the word trust
in it,
account
yes.
in it. It's just that what is it legally? And trusts are arrangements where something is devolved upon, that is given to somebody to hold for the benefit of another.
Yes.
And just in simple layman language, I'm saying that.
Yes.
So sometimes persons would want to benefit, say, some outside children.
Yes.
So they would create a trust account. I
Yes.
don't know why I said outside children. That's so,
But that's a
so-
very good
that's so-
example.
That's so
a very
bad.
good example.
to say
But
that.
it's real. Yeah.
Okay, and so they set up a trust for the benefit of those children. And so the account, the name on the account at the bank would be John Brown.
Yes.
But it's in trust for
4 children.
4 children, married. That's an example of a trust account. And so deposit insurance. So if he had $2.4 million in that account,
Yes.
JDIC would pay each of
Of
his
the 4.
children $600,000. Each of the children in that. But
Yes.
the records of the bank have to indicate that it is a trust account, and it has to indicate in some way that there are those beneficiaries and those that actually are to get those funds.
Yes.
So the records that when you open an account at the bank,
Yes.
here's a very important thing. The records that the bank keeps on your behalf are also very important.
Yes.
So this is something news the public can use when you go to the bank. Make sure that your records are properly kept by the bank and
Yes.
are up to date.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent.
Because
All right.
we will only act on the records
Yes.
of the clearly of the
Yes.
financial institution, unless you can otherwise prove that you are in fact the owner. But you don't want to have to go through that, so it's best to just have your records
By
straight.
what formula calculation has the JDIC settled on $600,000? I've always wondered as a layman in my teenage years. So okay,
Right.
$600,000. Where does that figure come from?
When the corporation started in 1998, the amount was $200,000, and it was $200,000 for 3 years up to 2001, when it was raised to $300,000.
Yes.
In 2001, it was raised again to $600,000. Okay. What we would have done is we'd have looked generally at countries like Jamaica that had deposit insurance and looked at the level of coverage that they were offering. We'd as well look at the levels of deposits in banks.
Yes.
We would as well have looked at the exchange rate
Yes.
at the time. But importantly, what we also look at is the fact of how many persons are you covering?
Yes.
How many persons in the population are you covering?
Yes.
Now, there is an international standard that basically says that your deposit insurance system, for it to be credible,
Yes.
and it needs to be credible in the minds of the public,
Yes.
should cover between 90 and 95% of the depositors in your banking system.
Yes.
At $600,000,
Yes.
we cover nearly 97%.
Yes.
And when we say cover, we mean fully cover
Yes.
almost 97% of depositors in the banking system.
Yes. And of course,
At that level.
At that level.
At the level of $600,000. But let me just add something to that to explain. Good deposit insurance does not cover everything.
Yes.
As does good insurance generally, because then you increase this thing called moral hazard.
Yes.
If every deposit was covered in every bank, then nobody even care how the bank runs.
Absolutely.
So, but given the importance of banks to our economy and to persons who want to do business, who want to trade, make payments, it is so important that we cover those small depositors. Because remember I said last week that the smaller
MSMEs,
depositors,
and the small
are
depositors,
the vast
bulk,
majority of persons
We all
that do business with banks.
have about 2 minutes left. I have to ask this because people will say, well, yeah, $600,000 on paper, that looks fine and dandy. But when I compare it to the EU, the UK, for instance, £85,000 sterling. The EU, we can't say the rest of the EU now because Britain is still there. It's 100,000 euros. And if you do the calculation, it works out that our $600,000 is around about 3,000 and odd pounds sterling relative to what we work out to that.
Gotcha.
So we really aren't in step with the big boys, and perhaps the JDIC would want to look to raise the ceiling. You would say, I'm sure, that raising the ceiling would take you well below your 90% threshold of coverage.
Raising the ceiling would take us above the 97% coverage, but only just by a small fraction.
Yes.
The fact is 97% of the depositors in the banks are fully covered.
Yes.
So if their bank was to fail,
Yes.
they would get back all the money they have in the bank.
Yes.
You know, that's what's important. And remember, as I said, this thing of moral hazard.
Yes.
You would have to look at the British economy and the
rest of the EU
region to find out what are the levels
and it's
of
not
deposits.
comparable in real terms.
And it's not
Jamaica
comparable in
against
real
them,
terms,
I mean,
absolutely. And then you go back to this moral hazard thing. The persons who hold extremely large deposits in banks know how to assess their risk.
Yes.
And and it's highly likely that they have other assets. So if their bank was to fail, they wouldn't be on the streets.
Yes.
You know, so we are not trying to cover the large deposit holders. We're trying to make sure the vast majority of Jamaicans are fully covered, and that's what we do.
Excellent. All right. Antoinette McKain, we're out of time. I just want to say that, is there any last word you want to put in this, the 20th year of the existence of the JDIC, which you lead as CEO?
Yes, thank you. I would like to say that we have a number of activities coming up. Just to mark this 20th year, I hate to say celebrate, to mark it, and also to be able to say to people what we think of the future.
Yes.
You know, what we think, what we want to offer in the future, and that we are going to be proactive about it.
Yes.
We're going to respond to the innovation in the appropriate ways, and we have a newspaper supplement coming out on the 31st of August, and we'd like you to have a read of that because we talk a little bit about the future and the future of regulation in the age of digitization. That's very important because digitization is here to stay. Mobile money products, which a lot of our people are now more familiar with. We're going to have some articles on that and start you and pique your interest and get you informed because information is the most powerful thing. As well, we will be having our 20th anniversary launch on August 31st downtown because we think it's just a nice place downtown. And we'll be having a 20th anniversary service on September 9th. We'll be having, here's what the public really needs to know too. We'll be having public forum town hall meetings in Kingston and Montego Bay. The Kingston one is November 10 and the Montego Bay one is in February 2019. A date will be announced February. It's a little way off. So we're doing those things and they're really public education initiatives to sensitize the public as to the protections, reassure them about the protections, and just discuss with them how we see the future and how we protect these electronic payments
Yes.
that are available now to the public.
Excellent. JDIC, protecting deposits for you and me. Antoinette McKain, CEO. Thank you very much and happy anniversary.
Thank you so much, George, for this opportunity.
That's been Let's Talk Finance for this week.
That was Let's Talk Finance, brought to you by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service.